Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign was a celebration of third-wave feminism. But if Elizabeth Warren gets the nomination in 2020, her campaign is promising something more, a full-blown attack on men as a gender. Watch this.
I am especially glad to be here in Washington Square Park. I wanted to give this speech right here, and not because of the arch behind me or the president that this square is named for. Nope. We are not here today because of famous arches or famous men. In fact, we're not here because of men at all.
Yeah, because biology is not real. Men had no role in our being here. The question is, does all of this stuff, all this rhetoric, all these politics actually do anything for women? Are they better off? Are they happier than they were, say, 50 years ago when it all began? Great question, rarely asked. Suzanne Venker has asked it. She's author of the book Women Who Win at Love. She says there are 4 lies that feminism tells. Instead of liberating women, they're making them miserable. Suzanne Venker joins us tonight. Suzanne, thanks so much for coming on. So why does no one ever ask that question if this liberation movement, which has been pretty transformative, I would say, of the country, is worth doing in the first place? You would think we'd know that women were happier. Are they happier?
They're not happier, and we had that study several years ago that came out and showed that women are decidedly less happy than men after, of course, this last 40 years of supposed so-called liberation. And that drumbeat, that constant drumbeat of feminism, feminist lies, which is what this article that I wrote was about, is absolutely having an enormous impact on our culture and on women, and specifically on their relationships with men and our ability to build happy families. Yeah, well, it's certainly noticeable. I don't think anything has changed our society more or for the worse. But to tell us specifically, as you do so capably in this piece, what some of the lies are. Okay, so the 4, there's actually more than 4, to be honest with you, but those 4 that I named there were the ones that were the biggest ones that came to my mind, which is, number 1, that women don't need men, and that's, of course, espoused left and right in all kinds of ways throughout the media. The second one is that men and women are the same, or that gender is a social construct instead of biologically driven.
Yes.
The third one is that there's no such thing as a biological clock, so we're not allowed to even talk about that because, God forbid, women have babies and get derailed on their careers, and we want them to be in the workforce, of course, full-time all the time. And if you step out and have babies, that's going to ruin the feminist agenda, so we don't like to talk about that. And then the fourth one is that a career is more meaningful than marriage and children. So those are the 4 that I focused on in that article.
So what you're describing is a movement that is at war with nature, is at war with physical reality, with biology itself. I mean, what does that say? It sounds almost like a kind of delusion.
Well, it is a delusion. It's a complete delusion, and it's based on that very idea that gender is, in fact, again, this social construct, that if we just changed the way we raised boys and girls, men and women eventually, or males and females, would eventually become interchangeable. And so we know, of course, that that's ridiculous, and that flies in the face of common sense and evolutionary biology. And one of the things that really makes that obvious is when women hit around the age of 30. Because prior to that, it is true that men and women live very similar sort of parallel lives. But right around that age of 30 is when women get sort of angst-ridden and realize, oh, wait a minute, I have a biological clock I better adhere to. If I want to have a family, how am I going to construct, where have all the good men gone? You might have heard that study just about a month ago that came out that showed there's a lack of, quote, economically attractive men for women to marry. Well, if you don't need men, why would that even be a thing? Obviously, it is still a thing.
No, because it's all such a horrible lie that has shafted all of us, and particularly young women. It's bitter to behold, and thank you for explaining it as clearly as you did. And I hope that you awaken people to what's going on, because it's important. Suzanne, great to see you tonight.
Thanks for having me.